The Songhai Empire was a state that dominated the Western Sahel/Sudan in the 15th and 16th century. At its peak, it was one of the largest states in African history. The state is known by its historiographical name, derived from its leading ethnic group and ruling elite, the Songhai. Sunni Ali established Gao as the capital of the empire, although a Songhai state had existed in and around Gao since the 11th century. Other important cities in the empire were Timbuktu and Jenne, conquered in 1468 and 1475 respectively, where urban-centered trade flourished, and to the south is the North Akan state of Bonoman. Initially, the empire was ruled by the Sunni dynasty, but it was later replaced by the Askia dynasty. During the second half of the 13th century, Gao and the surrounding region had grown into an important trading center and attracted the interest of the expanding Mali Empire. Mali conquered Gao towards the end of the 13th century. Gao would remain under Malian hegemony until the late 14th century. As the Mali Empire started to disintegrate, the Songhai reasserted control of Gao. Songhai rulers subsequently took advantage of the weakened Mali Empire to expand Songhai rule. Under the rule of Sunni Ali, the Songhai surpassed the Malian Empire in area, wealth, and power, absorbing vast areas of the Mali Empire and reached its greatest extent. His son and successor, Sunni Baru, was a less successful ruler of the empire, and as such was overthrown by Muhammad Touré, one of his father's generals, who instituted political and economic reforms throughout the empire. A series of plots and coups by Askia's successors forced the empire into a period of decline and instability. Askia's relatives attempted to govern the empire, but political chaos and several civil wars within the empire ensured the empire's continued decline, particularly during the brutal rule of Askia Ishaq I. The empire experienced a period of stability and a string of military successes during the reign of Askia Daoud. Ahmad al-Mansur, the Moroccan sultan at the time, demanded tax revenues from the empire's salt mines. Askia Daoud responded by sending a large quantity of gold as a gift in an attempt to appease the sultan. Askia Ishaq II ascended to power in a long dynastic struggle following the death of Askia Daoud. He would be the last ruler of the imperial Songhai Empire. In 1590, al-Mansur took advantage of the recent civil strife in the empire and sent an army under the command of Jadar Pasha to conquer the Songhai and to gain control of the trans-Saharan trade routes. After the disastrous defeat at the Battle of Tondabai, the Songhai Empire collapsed. The post-imperial Songhai succeeded the empire as the continuation of Songhai culture and society in its Dendi province. History. Pre-imperial Songhai. The Songhai Empire replaced Mali as the most important empire in West Africa. Origination as a smaller kingdom along the eastern side of the Niger River, the Songhai would expand their territory dramatically from the reign of King Sunni Ali. In ancient times there were several different groups of people that collectively formed the Songhai identity. Among the first people to settle in the region of Gao were the Sorko people, who established small settlements on the banks of the Niger River. The Sorko fashioned boats and canoes from the wood of the Kale Cedrat tree and fished and hunted from their boats and provided waterborne transport for goods and people. Another group of people that moved into the area to live off of the Niger's resources were the Gao people. The Gao were hunters and specialized in hunting river animals such as crocodile and hippopotamus. The other group of people known to have inhabited the area were the Du people. They were farmers who raised crops in the fertile lands bordering the river. Sometime before the 10th century, these early settlers were subjugated by more powerful, horse-riding Songhai speakers, who established control over the area. All these groups of people gradually began to speak the same language, and they and their country eventually became known as the Songhai. 49. Imperial. The earliest dynasty of kings is obscure, and most of the information about this dynasty comes from an ancient cemetery near a village called Saini, close to Gao. Inscriptions on a few of the tombstones in the cemetery indicate that this dynasty ruled in the late 11th and early 12th centuries, and that the rulers from this dynasty bore the title of Malik. Other tombstones mention a second dynasty, whose rulers bore the title Zua. There is only myth and legend to describe Zua origins. The Tariq al-Sudan, written in Arabic around 1655, provides an early history of the Songhai as handed down through oral tradition. The chronicle reports that the legendary founder of the Za or the Zua dynasty was called Za al-Yaman, who originally came from Yemen and settled in the town of Kukia. 60 What happened to the Zua rulers is not recorded. Pre-imperial kingdom. The camel-riding Sanaja tribes were among the early people of the Niger Bend region. They were locally known as the Tuareg. These tribes rode out of the Great Sahara Desert and established trading settlements near the Niger. As time passed, North African traders crossed the Sahara and joined the Tuaregs in their Niger Bend settlements. They all conducted business with the people living near the river. As trade in the region increased, the Songhai chiefs took control of the profitable commerce around what was to later become Gao. Between 750 and 950, as the Ghana Empire prospered as the land of gold far to the west, the trading center at Gao became an increasingly important terminus for trade across the Sahara. The trade goods included gold, salt, slaves, cola nuts, leather, dates, and ivory. And by the 10th century, the Songhai chiefs had established Gao as a small kingdom, taking control of the people living along the trade routes. At around 1300, Gao had become so prosperous that it attracted the attention of the Mali Empire and its rulers. Gao was subsequently conquered by them, and Mali profited from Gao's trade and collected taxes from its kings until about the 1430s. Troubles in the Mali homelands made it impossible to maintain control of Gao. 50-51 Ibn Battuta visited Gao in 1353 when the town was a part of the Mali Empire. He arrived by boat from Timbuktu on his return journey from visiting the capital of the empire. Then I traveled to the town of Kaka, which is a great town on the Nile, one of the finest, biggest, and most fertile cities of the Sudan. There is much rice there, and milk, and chickens, and fish, and the cucumber, which has no like. Its people conduct their buying and selling with cowries, like the people of Mali. Imperial Songhai. Following the death of Mansa Suleiman in 1360, disputes over the succession weakened the Mali Empire. Furthermore, the ruinous reign of Mari Jata II left the empire in bad financial shape, but the empire itself passed intact to Musa II. However, the real power in the empire was in the hands of Mari Jata, Musa's Kankoro Siki. He put down a Tuareg rebellion in Takeda and attempted to quell the Songhai rebellion in Gao. While he was successful in Takeda, he did not manage to re-subjugate Gao, and so the Songhai effectively retained their independence. During his reign, Sunni Ali would be the one to expand the small kingdom of Gao into an enormous empire. Sunni Ali. Sunni Ali was the first king of the Songhai Empire and the 15th ruler of the Manai dynasty. He worked his hardest to get the Songhai Empire out of its rocky start. The Muslim leaders of Timbuktu asked him to drive out the invaders. Once Sunni Ali drove them out, he took this chance and took over Timbuktu. Soon, he had almost all the trading cities along the Niger River. Imperial Songhai. In the decades following the death of, disputes over succession weakened the Mali Empire, and in the 1430s Songhai, previously a Mali dependency, gained independence under the Sunni dynasty. Around 30 years later Sunni Suleiman Dama attacked Nima, the Mali province west of Timbuktu, paving the way for his successor, Sunni Ali, to turn his country into one of the greatest empires of medieval Africa. Sunni Ali. Sunni Ali reigned from 1464 to 1492, after the death of Suleiman Dama. Like Songhai kings before him, Ali was a Muslim. In the late 1460s, he conquered many of the Songhai's neighboring states, including what remained of the Mali Empire. Sunni Ali was considered the empire's most formidable military strategist and conqueror. During his campaigns for expansion, Ali conquered many lands, repelling attacks from the Mossi to the south and overcoming the Dogon people of the north. He annexed Timbuktu in 1468, after Islamic leaders of the town requested his assistance in overthrowing marauding Tuaregs who had taken the city following the decline of Mali. However, Ali met stark resistance after setting his eyes on the wealthy and renowned trading town of Jenne. After a persistent 7-year siege, he was able to forcefully incorporate it into his vast empire in 1473, but only after having starved its citizens into surrender. The invasion of Sunni Ali and his forces caused harm to the city of Timbuktu, and he was described as an intolerant tyrant in many African accounts. According to the Cambridge History of Africa, the Islamic historian Al-Zatf expresses this sentiment in describing his incursion on Timbuktu. Sunni Ali entered Timbuktu, committed gross iniquity, burned and destroyed the town, and brutally tortured many people there. When Akilu heard of the coming of Sunni Ali, he brought 1,000 camels to carry the Fuqaha of Sankor and went with them to Walata. The godless tyrant was engaged in slaughtering those who remained in Timbuktu and humiliated them. Sani Ali conducted a repressive policy against the scholars of Timbuktu, especially those of the Sankor region who were associated with the Tuareg. With his control of critical trade routes in cities such as Timbuktu, Sani Ali brought great wealth to the Songhai Empire, which at its height would surpass the wealth of Mali. In oral tradition, Sani Ali is often known as a powerful politician and great military commander. Whatever the case may have been, his legend consists of him being a fearless conqueror who united a great empire, sparking a legacy that is still intact today. Under his reign, Jenne and Timbuktu became great centers of learning. Askia the Great. After taking the throne, Muhammad is known as Askia the Great, even though he had no real right to be the king. Not only was he not in the royal family bloodline, he did not hold the sacred symbols which entitled one to become a ruler. Furthermore, he was most likely a descendant of Sonink lineage rather than Songhai, which means that by Songhai standards his family background would have not allowed him to be king. But Askia managed to bypass that law and take the throne. He organized the territories that Sani Ali had previously conquered and extended his power as far to the south and east. The army of the Songhai Empire under the Askia Muhammad I possessed a full-time corps of warriors. Al-Sadi, the chronicler who wrote the Tariq al-Sudan, compared Askia Muhammad I's army to that of his predecessor. He distinguished between the civilian and the army, unlike Sani Ali when everyone was a soldier. Askia Muhammad I is said to have possessed cynical attitudes towards kingdoms that lacked professional armies like his. He was not as tactful as Ali in the means of the military, but he did find success in alliances. Because of these alliances he was able to capture and conquer more vastly. Unlike Ali, however, he was a devout Muslim. Askia opened religious schools, constructed mosques, and opened up his court to scholars and poets from throughout the Muslim world. He sent his children to an Islamic school and enforced Islamic practices. Yet he was tolerant of other religions and did not force Islam on his people. Like Mansa Musa, Askia also completed one of the 5 pillars of Islam by taking a Hajj to Mecca, and, also like the former, went with an overwhelming amount of gold. He donated some to charity and used the rest for lavish gifts to impress the people of Mecca with the wealth of the Songhai. Islam was so important to him that, upon his return, he recruited Muslim scholars from Egypt and Morocco to teach at the Sankor Mosque in Timbuktu, as well as setting up many other learning centers throughout his empire. His pilgrimage was much less noteworthy to caring historians than that of Mansa Musa. They noted it consisted of an escort of 500 cavalry and 1,000 infantry, and with him he carried 300,000 pieces of gold. Among his great accomplishments was an interest in astronomical knowledge which led to a flourishing of astronomers and observatories in the capital. While not as renowned as his predecessor for his military tactics, he initiated many campaigns, notably declaring jihad against the neighboring Mawsi. Even after subduing them, he did not force them to convert to Islam. His army consisted of war canoes, expert cavalry, protective armor, iron-tipped weapons, and an organized militia. Not only was he a patron of Islam, he also was gifted in administration and encouraging trade. He centralized the administration of the empire and established an efficient bureaucracy which was responsible for, among other things, tax collection and the administration of justice. He also demanded that canals be built in order to enhance agriculture, which would eventually increase trade. More important than anything he did for trade was the introduction of weights and measures and the appointment of an inspector for each of Songhai's important trading centers. During his reign, Islam became more widely entrenched, trans-Saharan trade flourished, and the Saharan salt mines of Taghaza were brought within the boundaries of the empire. Decline. As Askia the Great grew older, his power declined. In 1528 his sons revolted against him and declared Musa, one of Askia's many sons, as king. Following Musa's overthrow in 1531, Songhai's empire went into decline. Following multiple attempts at governing the empire by Askia's sons and grandsons, there was little hope for a return to the power it once held. Between the political chaos and multiple civil wars within the empire, it came as a surprise when Morocco invaded Songhai unexpectedly. The main reason for the Moroccan invasion of Songhai was to seize control of and revive the trans-Saharan trade in salt and gold. The Songhai military, during Askia's reign, consisted of full-time soldiers, but the king never modernized his army. On the other hand, The invading Moroccan army included thousands of arquebusiers and 8 English cannons. In the decisive Battle of Tandabay, the Moroccans destroyed the entire Songhai army and proceeded to capture Gao and Timbuktu, marking the end of the empire. Post-Imperial Songhai. Under the Imperial Songhai, Dendi had been the easternmost province, governed by the prestigious Dendi Fari. This province was the only surviving part of the Songhai Empire and the place where the Askia dynasty fled to and continued to rule after the defeat by the invading Saadi dynasty of Morocco at the Battle of Tandabay and at another battle 7 months later. The first ruler, who was Askia Ishak II, was deposed by his brother Muhammad Gao, who was in turn murdered on the order of the Moroccan Pasha. The Moroccans then appointed Suleiman as puppet king, ruling the Niger between Djenné and Gao. South of Tillabéri, the Songhai resistance against Morocco continued under Askia Nu, a son of Askia Davoud. He established his capital at Lulami. Conflict with the Saadi dynasty. After the Moroccans had Askia Suleiman appointed as their puppet, the Pasha, Mahmoud ibn Zarqun, attempted to conquer remaining Dendi province. Askia Nu resisted the invasion by a costly guerrilla warfare lasting 2 years. In 1594, Mahmud was forced to discontinue the war and retreated, just to be killed in the same year by Dogon, with whom Nu was probably allied. The new Pasha, called Mansur, continued the war against the remaining Songhai Empire, and again Nu resorted to guerrilla warfare. This situation lasted until 1599, when Nu's followers became tired of the war and deposed him in favor of his brother Harun. In 1609, the city of Djenné revolted against the Saadi Pashas with Dendi support. The Saadi were eventually able to regain the city, but with a lack of support from their homeland, they soon abandoned the area, leaving it to Tuareg and Fulbe nomads. In 1612, Askia al-Amin came to power. His short reign of 6 years was followed by the rule of Askia Davoud. Davoud killed many people during his reign, including relatives and members of the military. His brother, Ismail, fled to Timbuktu and sought Saadi support to overthrow al-Amin. Ismail returned to Songhai and deposed his brother in 1639. Upon attempting to send the foreign army back, he was deposed and replaced by a ruler that the Pashas felt would be easier to deal with. This ruler was eventually removed by the Songhai people. Decline. The Songhai Empire existed in its Dendi province for the next 2.5 centuries, witnessing increasingly unstable reigns, coups and counter-coups. When France entered the region, the empire was defensively unprepared. In 1901, the French deposed the last Askia, ending Songhai's control of either Mali or Niger until independence. The Songhai Empire broke into several small principalities, each ruled by an Askia, namely Erugathai, Dargol, Tara, Siki, Kokoru, Garal, Karma, Nemuro, Lulami, which hosted the new capital, among others. Defeat. Following the death of Emperor Askia Daoud, a civil war of succession weakened the empire, leading Sultan Ahmad I al-Mansur of the Saadi dynasty of Morocco to dispatch an invasion force under the eunuch Jadar Pasha. Jadar Pasha was a Spaniard by birth, but had been captured as an infant and educated at the Saadi court. After a march across the Sahara Desert, Jadar's forces captured, plundered, and razed the salt mines at Taghaza and moved on to Gao. When Emperor Askia Ishak II met Jadar at the 1591 Battle of Tandabay, Songhai forces, despite vastly superior numbers, were routed by a cattle stampede triggered by the Saadi's gunpowder weapons. Jadar proceeded to sack Gao, Timbuktu, and Djenné, destroying the Songhai as a regional power. Governing so vast an empire proved too much for the Saadi dynasty, however, and they soon relinquished control of the region, letting it splinter into dozens of smaller kingdoms. The Songhai Empire continued to strive in its only remaining province of Dendi.